vlog viewers, and welcome to the first edition of Gerald's Fireside Chat. As you can see, I'm attired in my nightwear and I'm in my man cave. It's actually a logia, which means a room with an open side, because these Queenslanders, you're supposed to have them open because they're solar passive. And this is still a bit open, but no fireplace because, you know, Queensland's a bit warm and these houses don't really have fireplaces, and so built before 1905, which was before the advent of the gas and the electricity, and perhaps global warming has something to do with this. But I digress. Today I wanted to talk to you about happiness. Happiness is a new idea, I believe, and I want to levy it against some older ideas, namely those of distributive justice. I can't say I'm a very happy man. I'm not totally unhappy. I'm content in my misery much of the time, and I'm happy enough to get by. But nevertheless, I think an ode to happiness is, or a discussion of happiness, an affirmation of happiness is in order. So in my life I've hung out with the academics, and these academics are often concerned with distributive justice. So if someone works in a particularly demanding way, or a way that requires education, they should be remunerated monetarily to a greater degree than someone who hasn't the same requirements to perform their job, nor the same stringent demands. And there's a couple of ideas here, I think. One is that there are some jobs that no one wants to do. That's one, A. And B, some jobs which require a certain degree of responsibility and focus to do, and are more difficult in that sense to do them. So an example of A might be a sewerage worker. I think it's a good example. Or domestic labour is another good example. And an example of B might be a brain surgeon. It's a classic example that we all tend to bring up in these circumstances. So one idea that I had is that if people did what they liked, if they enjoyed what they were doing, then this question of remuneration wouldn't come up. But what about those jobs, let's start with objection A, that no one wants to do, such as sewage worker or ditch digger? We'll move on to domestic labour, which is an important issue in a moment. So one thing that strikes me about, for instance, water recycling is that there's a whole bunch of people out there who are very, very passionate about it and who want to do it. Do they also want to get their hands dirty in the sewer, or are they just theorists? Well, I suspect that in order to be a really fulfilled and good theorist, at some point you get your hands dirty as well. So I wonder whether there are, if even sewage work, if even hydrology is a passionate concern for some people, and let's note a green aspect to this as well, by the way, then one wonders whether that's a very good example of a job no one wants to do. What about ditch digging? One of the funny things about ditch digging is that it's interesting. Marx uses this as an example of to illustrate abstract labour, and ditch digging is kind of an abstract, right? Like, people don't just dig ditches in an abstract manner. They might do it to bury someone, for instance. And so then what we're talking about is end-of-life issues. And in fact, my father was very passionate about end-of-life issues, and he did a lot of work unpaid because he was very passionate about assisting people to have good deaths. So I wonder whether ditch digging is even a very good example. Fence building. We've got to remember a lot of the unpleasant jobs like bombing others or building fences. A lot of these jobs wouldn't exist if we got rid of remuneration, because they're jobs to do with market jostling, and I strongly suggest that they wouldn't exist. But if we return to the classic examples of ditch digging or sewage working, I think what we find is that, in fact, that they are part of enjoyable life projects. Domestic work is another interesting one. Domestic work Actually, what I found is audiobooks turn domestic work into valuable reading time. I've never read so much as when I've been doing the dishes and the other domestic work that's required in this somewhat decaying abode in which I live. So I'll leave objection A about jobs that no one wants to do at that, just noting that if there aren't really jobs that no one wants to do, then remuneration is not required to force people to do necessary labour that they otherwise wouldn't. And look, that's what I'm arguing against, the need for remuneration. Okay, folks, I want to abolish money. I reckon money is a really crap idea. And I'm starting with this idea of remuneration. Okay, so what about jobs which require a lot of study and which have a lot of responsibility? Now, when I fix up my push bikes, I F it all the time. I F it all the time. I'm a dreadful push bike mechanic. I enjoy being a push bike mechanic, but I'm dreadful at it. And but it's a big deal, you know. I put a nut on wrong, take it off and put it on right. Yeah. What about if I was a brain surgeon, right, and I effed up? Well, I couldn't just do that and kind of be swearing and carrying on like I do. The consequences would be more dire. And in addition, in order to be a brain surgeon, I would have had to study for many years at an institution of higher learning, such as there are so many great ones around at the moment. So, shouldn't I be remunerated for that responsibility and for that course of study? And my suggestion to you is that if I enjoy it, then I don't need remuneration to do it. I guess to a certain extent, I guess to a certain extent, we can put aside for a moment the questions of what I can get. But if we're just going to start with this question of motivation, right, so we need someone to dig the ditch, we need someone to be the storage worker, we need someone to be the brain surgeon, then I think that it's not necessary for me to be paid to do these things if I enjoy them. And that applies as much to the brain surgeon as it does to any productive, in the loosest sense, labour. Okay, so then we do come to this question of people being rewarded for what they do, or not being rewarded for what they don't do, which a market society promises to be this meritocracy. But let me point something out to you here that I think is very often forgotten. As if people are doing what they want, then, and they're doing it because they enjoy it, then isn't the stuff there? Like, okay, I enjoy mucking around with solar panels, hence, you know, some of this garbage, they're all in disrepair. But here you go, some fuse from one. I enjoy growing tomatoes. I haven't done a very good job this year, but I enjoy doing it. So I enjoy doing these things. Someone enjoys being a brain surgeon, someone else, I enjoy repairing push bikes, especially listening to an audiobook. I enjoy making clothes. Okay, so people do these things. Then isn't it the case that that the reward is not simply in the enjoyment, but also that goods are available. Solar power is available. Push bikes are available. Tomatoes are available. You know, there's only so much solar power I'm going to need if I make solar power and invert it. And by the way, I'm not so much at the moment, but I've been part in the past of communities of people who are passionate about this stuff. They don't need all the solar power they make. I don't need all the push bikes I have. I've got 5 push bikes. I give push bikes to the neighbours in various states of disrepair. So, but we'll move on from that. So I don't think that remuneration is necessary to get jobs done, and I don't think remuneration is necessary for people to be able to live well. In fact, I think that without remuneration, you're not pressured to consume things. You're not told you want things. You're more free to develop your individual appetites. And so this addresses the question that can arise about what about goods that are in scarce demand. I think that people will respond to each other. And I think that if we're talking about natural disasters, that creativity, in the sense I'm talking about it, is a way of interacting with nature. Now, I flagged a greener aspect to this non-remunerative vision that I have already. And the green aspect is that of people's life projects being able to not just come up with unusual and beneficial results in brain surgery or in hydrology or in end-of-life issues or in how one enjoys doing domestic labour, but also in respect of our interactions with nature. And so I think that this idea of a non-remunerative society is a greener society as well. So look, I'll leave it at that for the moment. Have we got any questions from the audience out there? No, we don't. Okay, all right. Thank you.
There is no audience.